Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio. You're listening to Next Gen Conservative Radio.
You have entered the analysis zone, a place where political correctness is non-existent. Critical thinking is required and conservative common sense reigns supreme. This is the Whitfield analysis, and now, here is your host, Sam Whitfield.
Morning glory and evening grace, America. Sorry, Hugh Hewitt, I had to steal that from you. It's Sam Whitfield here for my first episode of the Whitfield analysis on Sunday nights. I usually, for those of you who are just turning in, I did the show on Thursday nights, but because of school and whatnot, I'm a senior in high school, that got to be pretty hectic. So let's get right down to it, shall we? It's Sunday night, new show. It's been a great week in terms of meeting new conservatives. For those of you who have been following me for a while now, most of you who are listening probably won't be familiar with me, but usually I don't have guests on. Usually I fly solo. I'm a lot like Rush Limbaugh in that respect. But tonight I have a very interesting guest. She is a blogger and an avid tweeter for the group of tribbles over at Hugh Hewitt's Universe website, which is his premium content website. As most of you know, I've met Hugh. He's a very nice guy. Hopefully, Mr. Hewitt, we can get you onto this show sometime. But anyway, Tamara Jackson, who I met earlier this week, is a very wonderful woman, and she's agreed to join me to talk about the Tribble group, and we're going to be discussing all sorts of things. But before we get into that, the telephone number, if you want to call in to talk to Tamara and I, is 714-816-4740. And you can email me by going to theanalysisnow.wordpress.com and hitting that Contact Sam button and filling out the info there. We're also streaming live on NGCTV. You can also find the feed there by going to theanalysisnow.wordpress.com and clicking on the Whitfield analysis on NGCTV. Alright, so without further ado, I'd like to bring on my guest, Tamara Jackson. Hi, Tamara. How are you doing?
Hi, Sam. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So first of all, welcome to the Whitfield analysis and Next Gen Conservative Radio. First of all, just give the audience a little bit of background about who you are, not what you do.
You bet, and thanks for having me on. It's really an honor to be on with somebody that's young and conservative and looking towards the future and helping to shape the thought processes of other young people. I love that. I'm just an ordinary person that's a lifelong conservative. I'm very concerned about our culture, our country, what the direction it's going. I have been for some time. I've been a listener to Hugh Hewitt's show, amongst others. I love Dennis Prager, but Hugh's my number one show. Hugh encouraged those of us that were listening to join Twitter in about 2008, at which time, once we were all on Twitter, we realized that there were scores and scores of us out there that loved the show, that were in total agreement. We began tweeting with each other and with Hugh, and he was trying to come up with a name for all of us. We caused trouble, but we also echoed agreement with his guests and topics of the day. And he went through several permutations, the first of them being house elves, which was hysterical. The second iteration was dufflepuds, which people may know comes from Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. And Hugh is also a fan of Lewis, as am I. So it was likely that he'd come up with that one. But the third idea was tribbles, which, of course, comes from the Star Trek episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, that kept multiplying, causing trouble, getting everywhere, and we all liked that name. So the moniker we now go by is Tribbles. It's been in place since 2009. There's quite a group of us, and I began helping organize the group, organize events, etc. In 2009, we have meetups, we have all sorts of events, and have become quite a community online, on Twitter, and in Facebook. And that about sums it up.
It's that new media that is really just grabbing a hold of the conservative movement. I mean, 4 years ago, the Barack Obama campaign, I don't know. Most people agree with me on this, but I think social media is the reason why Barack Obama won the election in 2008. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you a lot of is what, and I asked this a lot of my other guests, which I don't have on very often, but when I do, I always ask them this: what do the conservatives need to do in order to remove Barack Obama and Tamara Jackson? We've seen him for the last 4 years, and he has not done a good job. But how do conservatives not only win, but win massively in November?
Well, they need to engage. The fact is, there are millions and millions of good conservatives around this nation who have not been engaged. They have been about the business of living good, constructive lives, raising families, paying taxes, etc. They've left politics to the politicians and been a bit disdainful of it. But that can no longer be the case. We need to be engaged. We need to be supporting good candidates. We need to be absconding social media and using it to good effect. As you said, in 2008, the Obama campaign jumped on the Twitter bandwagon, and they were able to gain the attention of the young, idealistic, college-age and 20-something people that were into new media, that were very prone to ideas that they received in college. So they jumped on that idea of hope and change, and it was all coming through Twitter, and they were on the front lines of this new hopeful, changey battle, and were excited. Meanwhile, the conservatives were still using campaign letters and advertisements on TV, which people fast forward through in this day and age. So, fast forward to 2012, we are getting more and more folks using new media. It's of utmost importance. Everybody should be on Twitter. They should be on Facebook, Twitter, even Pinterest. We need to use every bit of social media we can, because new media will help us end run old and MSM media that we know to be skewed to the left. It just is. So we just can't sit back any longer. All the good people out there that are busy in their churches, busy in their neighborhoods, they have to step up, they have to vote, they have to get everybody else they know that's a good, faithful conservative to vote, and they have to get them engaged. It's time, and the Republic needs them.
Amen to that. I mean, it's very refreshing, Tamara, because I've been saying this pretty much since 2010. Most listeners
Mhm.
of my radio show, and I think I told you this yesterday when we spoke on the phone, I've been doing this since 2008. That's when I started my podcasting / internet broadcasting career, and it's nice to hear someone else say that social media is critical. I mean, that's the reason why we lost. We weren't using social media. Not only were we not using it, but John McCain at one point, no one remembers this except for me, but I remember hearing John McCain at one point, someone asked him about a question about Twitter, and he replied with, "What's Twitter?" Which,
Yeah.
that's what really killed us in the new election. Now, getting on to some topics, what's going on, it's kind of relating to social media. What do you think? What's your take on this whole Benghazi embassy raid? And I don't know if you've seen, but like a lot of the mainstream media outlets are blaming social media conservatives for this. So, what's your take on that news?
Well, interesting that you should ask me, because I wrote an article. I was so incensed by what I was hearing. I wrote an article for my website. I have a website with my partner, who's a wonderful web designer out of Arizona. His name is Michael Witham. And the website is tribblenews.com. I would encourage everyone to go there. Not only do I have tutorials for Twitter for those that are new to these social media apps, you can get on there. It will take you step by step through what to do to sign up and how to use it effectively. Secondly, I wrote an article entitled, and we have several articles on there that concern the Benghazi events, which were just the start of all the uprisals. But I wrote an article, Time for Real Foreign and Domestic Leadership, over at tribblenews.com. I was aghast at what they were saying about this video, that through everything, all my research and so forth, there's somebody that people need to read, Victor Davis Hanson, and he stated exactly what I was sensing, that the YouTube video had been public domain for some time. How could we believe that it suddenly enraged the Arab street, and then just by happenstance it came out on 9/11? So in my mind, the film was an artful dodge. This was pre-planned. Even the weapons that were used, RPGs and such, are military grade. Those are not owned by the average person in their house that may have a Kalashnikov or a stick,
Right.
but they don't have RPGs and other military grade weapons. Everything about it reeked of a pre-planned military endeavor that the video was a cover for. And here we have the embassy at first tweeting an apology to those people whose religious feelings were hurt. It was horrific. We should have pronounced outrage immediately, as did Mitt Romney, and we need to have, once again, we need to have new media everywhere telling the truth.
Yeah, well, and see, that was the same thing. Like, when I heard about the raid, I was in school when I heard about what happened with the raid, and someone mentioned the YouTube video. And my first thought was that it stank with mainstream media lies, and that it was a pre-planned attack. Because, like you said, Tamara, if it was truly organic, if it had truly been Arab enragement, they would have not done. I mean, they could have still done damage with like sticks and whatnot, but there's no way that ordinary citizens have M16s, RPGs, Colt 1400s, any of that stuff to launch a full-scale raid. I mean, it's just insane.
Right. Right.
The another question I have for you is, what do you think about this whole MSM mainstream media poll manipulation? I think it's poll manipulation, but all the
I do.
all the major poll sightings have said that Barack Obama is ahead in every state, but I don't believe it. And what's your take on that, Tamara?
I concur with you, Sam. I'm sure you were listening on Friday when Hugh had Dr. Lee Marengoff, the poli-sci prof from Marist College, on, who is in charge of the Marist polls. He kept asking him repeatedly, how is it that your sampling is, I believe, 48% Dems to 28% Republicans? There was a 10-point spread or so. Is that fair? And how can you say that Obama is 7 points ahead in the polls if the sampling is 10% greater with Democrats? And he would not give a straight answer. So I suspect that there are a number of outliers on these polls. Even when you have Real Clear Politics or Rasmussen's or what have you, where they have averaging polls, they need to really throw out the outliers. And I think that the lion's share of the mainstream media polls seem to be so heavily weighted Democrat that it's hard to trust them. I really don't. I would call it polling that for determined results as opposed to an actual scientific sampling to predict likely results. They're polling for the outcome they want, is my feeling of the whole operation.
Right. I mean, the polls are not accurate, and I mean, so I mentioned something like that, but then I've got a couple, followers on Twitter and a couple friends of mine who are panicked, and they rightly should be so. That we're saying, what if the data is skewed? Then what do we listen to? How can we get accurate data? And I don't have any particular answer for that, Tamara, but I'm just curious to hear what you guys think. And also, like I said, any of you other tribbles, I know you guys are out there listening, so if you want to call in and talk to Tamara and I, 714-816-4740 is the telephone number. So what do you think we can do to spread the truth about the polling data when the mainstream media won't?
Yeah, well, I think people need to constantly be checking sites like realclearpolitics.com. That is a very good site. They need to listen to conservative people that know what they're talking about, that have a pulse on the public, what's really going on. Someone like our friend Hugh Hewitt. We need to be engaging, we need to be listening and learning all the time. People cannot just turn on the mainstream media, look at NBC News, look at CNN, and hope to get an objective message. They're not going to get it. I don't believe it's a massive conspiracy, but I do believe it's a massive worldview that they have, and they are putting forth that worldview. They don't like the idea that Mitt Romney has a chance. And I believe to follow that we should not have a sense of desperation and hopelessness, but we should have a sense of urgency. I think it's much closer. I think it's pretty much even right now across the country, but I believe everybody needs to have a great sense of urgency and be digging in to help to get out the information. If you hear someone on Hugh that's credible and some stats are out there, tweet them, put them on Facebook, email your friends. Let's get this done.
Right. I mean, just some balance out there. I mean, I don't even think Fox News is that credible anymore, Tamara. I mean, it's true that they do have more conservative beliefs, but I mean, even they've been skewing their polls a little bit more and whatnot.
Well, yeah, and Fox attempts to be fair and balanced. So they have commentators on there, and they have newscasters on there that you'll hear someone like Shepard, and he might be diametrically opposed to a John Scott. So everybody has their worldview, even on Fox News. Fox News is just more objective than the other networks. Thank God for Fox News. There are also, I'm having some tribal friends that are having me notice things. There are events coming up. For instance, I happen to know that you met Hugh at the Western Conservative Summit in Denver, and there's a like event coming up in LA, Wake Up America 2012 rally. People can go online to wakeupamerica2012.com. We need to be at all these events. We need to make our voices heard. We need to learn how to reach out to our communities of conservatives and get them involved, get them voting, and get Mitt Romney in.
Right. And we also, I want to put this into a little segue. I think I mentioned this to you, but earlier in the week, now I have not heard every Hugh Hewitt show. I don't always get to listen to him, which is why I'm subscribed to Universe, is because of the podcast. Right. It's wonderful. But one of the interviews I heard was with Frank Florio, who is the creator of MyRightVoice.com, and it's basically, the way he described it, is the Facebook for conservatives. Conservatives have been looking to build a social network for a while, and he came out with it, and he was on Hugh's show promoting it. Folks, I'm on there, and Tamara, I think you told me you just signed up before the show, so
yeah, I'm on there now.
So, folks, I've been tweeting that all week. Seriously though, don't ignore those tweets. I'd love to have all of you sign up at myrightvoice.com. The other so let's see. So we have the what the conservative movement needs to do. What do you think the conservative movement is doing right, though, in terms of social media?
I do believe that Mitt Romney's campaign is doing a terrific job. They've been learning as they go. They're implementing new media in great ways. They're having immediate rebuts to statements that are false by the other side. Great ads using Obama's words to illustrate points. So I think that's really good. I love how the GOP nationally has a website that's interactive. You can call from home. You can reach people from home. They have it all available on a person's computer. You can get on your PC, you can get on your Mac, and you can reach people. You don't even have to drive anywhere. It's fantastic. I do like the idea that someone like you, that's a young person, has started Next-Gen Conservatives, that you're reaching out to the next generation of voters. By the time you're 18, which is coming up shortly, right, you'll be able to vote, and you have a lot of friends that will be able to vote. Unfortunately, bad votes are often made between the ages of 18 and 28 because they're so influenced by the university liberal faculty. So if we can get people trained and understanding rock-solid conservative values before they even hit those campuses, they'll be able to think critically and defend their worldview, and they won't start out making bad votes. It's a great way to go, and I commend you for it, Sam.
Well, thank you. That was kind of going to be my last one of my last questions for you, which is what can the conservative youth movement, from your perspective, do? But I think you kind of already answered that. Again, where can we find you?
People can find me on Twitter. I am at Tammy J, and that's TAMIJ. I also have my website, which I wish everyone would go to, sign up for. If they want to contribute, send me an email. We could make you a contributor if you've got something to say and are adept at writing. It is TribbleNews.com. Once again, go to TribbleNews.com. There are articles there on how to implement Twitter. There's some great articles. We've got wonderful people amongst our Tribble community that are vets. Some are even active serving. We have artists, poets, writers, you name it. They're all great thinking conservatives, thoughtful conservatives, and you will enjoy reading them. So I just really thank you for having me on, Sam.
You're welcome. Well, before you go, we have 4 minutes left live streaming. But if you guys, I'm seeing tweets now about you arguing who's going to call in. You guys, why don't you all call in and talk to Tammy and I, because even though we have 4 minutes left, we can get something in here. And then the podcast still keeps on recording afterwards. I have 15 minutes of recording time, so we can all keep talking. But you guys need to call in within that 4-minute window. And we have a caller right now.
Okay.
An area code 678. I don't know who this is, but we'll see. So,
Okay.
does that sound familiar to you at all?
Not to me right away, but we'll see.
All right.
How familiar now?
Hello. You're on the Whitfield analysis.
Oh, it's Talk Radio 200, one of the Tribbles.
Oh, hi.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. Great to have you here.
Also known as Talk Radio 2000.
Yes, if you ask you, it's Talk Radio 2000, but don't tweet that, otherwise you won't get anything.
But so anyway, I have to. What's on your mind tonight, sir?
I think one of the most important things when going back to polling, I think what people need to do is look at state polls and not to get wrapped up in national polls, because the election is determined by states.
That's a good idea. Yeah, you're right.
That is a very good idea. I'll agree with you. So, I mean, in terms of the polling apparatus, how do you think we could get like a more accurate format? Just, I'm curious on your opinion on that.
Well, I primarily look at Rasmussen.
Oh.
His tracking polls daily, and then I look at whenever there are updates to the state polls, we also have to make efforts to get the Senate. We need to keep track of the Senate races too.
Right.
And Sam, just so you know, Talk Radio 200 is a contributor at TribbleNews.com. He's got a number of articles up there. He's a pretty prolific writer, and we're just very happy to have his contributions.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking for people to come over to Next Gen Conservative too, and perhaps join the organization. I'm gonna need a couple of co-hosts here in a couple months, so email me if you are interested in doing that, any of you guys. I think there are some other people who might want to call in, but thank you for your time, sir, and morning glory, evening grace.
Morning glory and evening grace to both of you.
All right, thank you.
Bye, Talk.
All right, so we have 2 lines open if you guys want to call.
90 seconds.
We have 90 seconds on air, but don't worry about that. You can still call in for at least 90 seconds, and then Tammy and I will have our discussion in a podcast. Kind of going into the after on-air segment, I want to ask you, how did you meet Hugh Hewitt? We went over this a little bit yesterday.
60 seconds.
But
I've been listening to Hugh since the early 2000s, and I would email in, then subsequently I would call in, typically for the movie hours when people would come on board, the 15th hour of 15 hours. Just almost felt like I knew him over the years, and began emailing him about different topics, and he would typically respond. Pretty amazing interaction with a show host and his audience. then once on Twitter, he began to know who I was that way as Tammy J, and I would call in from time to time and be flagged by him publicly, but have fun with it. And finally, I met him in person a few years ago. He was up in Oregon speaking, had an event
10
for
seconds.
The Lynn Benton County Republicans, I believe. And he had his on-air broadcast down there. He actually had me on the air that day, so he trusted me enough to be on air, which was probably a lapse in judgment. Then that evening he spoke, and we just had a tremendous time interacting and talking, hit it off, as I knew I would. All of us Tribbles are pretty much kindred spirits. We have his worldview. Most of us are people of faith, some not, but most of us are. We even seem to have his questionable sense of humor.
Yep.
And so we knew we would get along well, and we did. And since then, I've organized a number of events. He knows who I am through email, through calling in, through the show, through the annual events when we see each other live. And as you know, he's a very gracious person to anybody that he meets.
The only thing that's left is he and I were emailing back and forth for a while, and he wanted me to call him on his cell, but he never gave it to me. So perhaps maybe he and I should talk on that in some time. But did I ever? I know I told you the story about Hugh and I in the elevator.
About meeting him in the elevator. I was going to ask you if you would recount that for everyone. This is a terrific story.
Yeah, so I told this story a while back, over the summer after I got back from Western Conservative Summit, but for all you Tribbles who will now be listening to the podcast, because we're off air, we're in a podcast format now. I'm getting more tweets on this too, by the way. But when I was at the Western Conservative Summit, one of the program coordinators over lunch came up to me. It was interesting because over lunchtime, Bill Bennett was the keynote speaker for lunchtime on Saturday, and I like Bill, but considering that he gets about 5 in the morning, which is the same time I get up, I'm always usually groggy when I listen to him, and I don't know that much about Bill. So when the program coordinator came up, she said, hey, would you like to go meet Hugh Hewitt? And I said, do you mean see Hugh Hewitt or actually meet him? And she said, no, he wants to meet a group of young conservatives. So I said, hell yes, I'd like to meet Hugh Hewitt. So, so we went up to one of the floors. We were at the Denver Hyatt Regency, which is where the Western Conservative Summit was. We went up to this one hotel room / conference room thing, and we were waiting for him. I don't know. Star Parker was in the room too. I don't know if you know who.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
But I also got to meet Star Parker. She was actually standing right next to me while we were waiting for Hugh. But a couple of the Western Conservative Summit coordinators were talking about the events. And when Hugh finally came in, he shook my hand and kind of stuck in and said, "Sorry, I'm late," and did his whole spiel about being a conservative Catholic and a lawyer and really encouraging the youth to get involved. So afterwards, I went up, handed him my business card, and he said, "Next gen conservative, huh? You ought to trademark that." And I said, "Well, I'd love to keep in contact with you, so would you mind shooting me an email?" And he said, "Well, I'm out of business cards right now, but go to my website and we'll connect there." So I did, and we've kind of had email correspondence. But afterwards, I handed him my business card, and he and I were talking about various things. So then it was time for him to go downstairs because he was the keynote speaker for that evening. So we all followed him, and
this is what's priceless. I hope all the Tribbles are really listening.
Yeah,
to this.
I hope you guys are.
They'll get a kick out of this.
I hope you guys are listening to this. So we go to the elevator corridor, and at first, like, I'm hitting one of the buttons to go down on a separate elevator, and he calls over to me. He's like, "Sam, come on," and he's like, "Sam, right next to me," and I'm like, "You're serious?" And he's like, "Why not?" And I said, "Well," he said, and I said, "Well, Glenn Beck and always takes a separate elevator," because Glenn Beck was also at the Western Conservative Summit, and he said, "Well, I'm not Glenn Beck," so so I get into the elevator next to him, and there are 5 or 6 other people, young conservatives, and I'm sure all of us were thinking, I was thinking at least one, holy crap, I'm standing in an elevator next to one of my heroes. That's what was going through my head. Then we stopped off at a floor which none of us were destined to. We were supposed to get off at the same floor he was. And so this one woman gets on the elevator and she says, "Dennis Prager, is that you?" And Hugh turns to me and just bursts out laughing. He's like, "Sam, did you hear what he just called me? He said that I was Dennis Prager, but and I'm like, no ma'am, this is Hugh Hewitt." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Hugh. I listened to you too, and so that was hilarious. And the lady came up to me and she said, "I am so sorry, young man, if I embarrassed you." And I said, "Don't be." I said, Hugh was just busting your chops a little bit, but that was.
Hugh loves that.
It was priceless. I'm hoping that he told Dennis this story. If not, if anyone knows Dennis, Dwayne, forward him this podcast. He needs to hear this story because I know he won't tell him, so. But anyway, any more comments that you would like to comment on?
Any more comments that I have? I can't think of anything else right now. I think we've reiterated they need to go to your website. They need to go to myrightvoice.com and sign up. Everybody needs to start using new social media. I want to see them all go to TribbleNews.com. They ought to be tuning into Hugh, of course. We both would promote him and agree with his message, which he's on daily from 3 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and you can stream him online. If you go to HughHewitt.com, you can find the live link and stream him. He's fantastic.
You guys,
and they ought to be joining the universe as well.
you guys, I know I'm gonna tick some of you conservative teenagers off who are really cheap, but you guys ought to spend the money to join the universe. It's worth it. I just upgraded my monthly subscription to a yearly subscription. So honestly,
well, even a month is what? It's about the price of, say, a cappuccino and a cookie or something.
Yeah,
something like $5-6.
And my one complaint is that Universe yearly is $50. So it's pricier, but it's not that bad. I mean, there are some.
But Sam, there's so much content there that is not at other premium. There's a million. There's of course El Rushbo and Sean and Dennis and Laura.
Yeah.
Everybody has a website. But the universe is completely different. We have the video, we have the streaming video of the show, we have music shows, and the music shows are phenomenal and done by Hugh's very wonderful producer, Dwayne Patterson. People need to know this, so we get everything there. We get podcasts, we get video, we get music, you name it, it's there. It's a community of people that assemble there, and just have a wonderful time.
Well, not only that, but I mean the interaction between the audience and the host. That's the other thing I like about Hugh. I mean, when
Very dynamic.
when
Very
he
different than other
when
shows.
he told me to come into the elevator with him at the Western Conservative Summit, I knew, I was like, this is a guy who does not see himself as an untouchable media figure. This is a guy who actually prefers to be among the civilian bloggers and whatnot. I mean, it's a very, you will be part of a community, folks. I mean, I've only belonged to the universe for about 3 weeks now, and I've only been in the chat room for a full week. But honestly, for those of you who haven't listened before, you guys will be welcome. But anyway, folks, Tammy, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the program. And again, where can we find you on Twitter?
I'm at Tammy J, Tamij. Please follow me. I'll follow right back. And read TribbleNews.com.
All right, sounds good. God bless you, Tammy, and thank you for joining.
God bless you too. Thank you for having me on. It was wonderful, and keep up the good work, Sam.
I will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And folks, that concludes this evening's broadcast. I will be back next Sunday evening. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Folks, join. I'm serious. Please join. Please join us over at Next Gen Conservative. Join us at Tribble News. Join us at the Universe. Join us on Twitter. There's just so much that needs to happen. And folks, it is important that we get involved in new social media. As I said before, sign up for My Right Voice. It is the conservative social network. Folks, I will be back next week covering news and events on my own. I won't have a guest next week, at least I don't think so. Tammy was actually a last minute booking of my own. But anyway, folks, I really appreciate you all from the Universe for tuning in. I will see you guys tomorrow on the Universe. And the rest of you folks, I will see you next Sunday evening, same time, same place. Keep following me on Twitter. Morning Glory, Evening Grace. God bless you all. God bless America. From all of us here at Next Gen Conservative Studios, have a great night.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, folks. I'll see you next week.